Welcome everyone to another episode of the Practical SQL Server HA show. My name is Edwin Sarmiento, and the focus of these episodes, I call them episodes now, is to give you practical and actionable insights into making your SQL Server high availability and disaster recovery solutions work. Something that you can take action on. And not just that, but also practical, because for one, high availability and disaster recovery solutions are already expensive, very expensive. And so you don't want to spend more than what is necessary, but also you don't want to underspend on it, just enough. Enough to meet your recovery objectives and your service level agreements while implementing your high availability and disaster recovery solutions. A topic of this week's episodes is something that I really wanted to do in late 2023. I have been following mergers and acquisitions for a while, and people find it weird. But then my experience, not my experience, but this is something that I started thinking about. Mergers and acquisitions, whether I like it or not, will eventually impact my career. Um, the reason for that is I look at the bigger picture. And so I started paying attention to acquisitions from big software companies more than 10, 15 years ago. It all started when I think it was Quest Software. I was a huge fan of Quest Software in the mid 2000s until Quest Software was acquired by, I believe it was Dell back then. It was that, and then all of a sudden, the support experience became completely different from how it was. Okay, that was one example. The other example was when EMC, the storage company, uh, was acquired and bought over by Dell. Yeah, it was Dell EMC. Same story. When we were working with EMC engineers, they were very helpful. They responded to our questions fast, and they provided great customer service. And then Dell acquired them. Next thing you know, we're no longer getting the same level of technical support or customer support experience that we had prior to the acquisition. And I see patterns. Same thing. Confio. Confio was a database monitoring tool, great tool, by the way, uh, which was acquired by SolarWinds. Same thing, great experience, great customer experience with Confio, and then SolarWinds. If you were using Confio back then they got acquired by SolarWinds. You know the drill. Same thing happened with Sentry One, like SQL Sentry. I was uh, I had I was almost always recommending SQL Sentry to my customers back then before they rebranded it to Sentry One. But then I saw what happened to Sentry One support after they got bought over by SolarWinds. And you see the pattern, right? You start to see the patterns between companies acquiring smaller companies. And of course, if you're not working with these technologies, it's no big deal, right? I mean, why do I care if I'm not working? But of course, working with the enterprise in one way, shape, or form, they will be using these products or these technologies or these platforms from these vendors. And then you become a direct, that you will have a direct impact of whatever happens. And I tell this to my customers all the time. Let's say, for instance, you have a recovery time objective for your platform, your SQL Server databases. This was an example that I used after the EMC acquisition. Let's say, for instance, that your databases are in a failover clustered instance. They're on the EMC SAN, and all of a sudden, the EMC SAN becomes unavailable, maybe because of a firmware upgrade, or maybe because a hardware issue that they need to replace. There's the service level agreement, the EMC contract that needs to be met, right? Is that 4 hours? Is that 8 hour? But nobody asks about the engineer responding to that question. If I happen to be part of the EMC acquisition and now I'm afraid that my job is going to be cut after the acquisition, you think I'll be happy to help you while I'm worried about my job? Of course not. The quality of technical support that I'm going to provide to the customer is now dependent on whether or not I'm going to have a job tomorrow. And nobody thinks about this because they're only concerned about, if I pick up the phone, will somebody help? Right? They're only looking at how much does it cost in the beginning when I'm buying licenses, the hardware, the support, but nobody thinks about all of these dynamics that are happening within an organization that would affect your HA and DR solutions. And now this happens. You're probably aware of the VMware conversation late 2022. Oh, I'll save that for later, although you already saw it. You're probably aware of this mid 2022 when Broadcom announced acquisition of VMware. Now, history tells me Broadcom's not really good at acquiring and keeping great companies. Look at their history, right? Their goal is to make more money, not necessarily to serve their customers. CA in what was that product that I use? Again, support-wise, went down the drain. So I kind of knew that this is going to be something that would happen to VMware once they got acquired. It's, again, patterns. I don't know, maybe because of the fact that I'm a data professional, it's very easy for me to spot these patterns. The thing is, this is something that I kind of knew it's going to happen. Late 2023, Broadcom finally announced the VMware acquisition. And then this happened. Well, not immediately. I think they acquired VMware back in November 2023, and then the new announcements started kicking in. Like Broadcom ends perpetual licenses for VMware products, or post VMware buy, Broadcom kills perpetual licenses in favor of subscriptions. Now, here's the thing though, every company wants to make money, but sometimes that goes beyond serving their customers. And when that happens, it becomes to the detriment of the customer. I've seen so many of these happen. It's also one of the reasons why, especially support, it's also one of the reasons why I've been a part of migration projects, moving away from one platform to the other because of mergers and acquisitions. And again, I don't know, maybe I was just lucky that every time I see mergers and acquisitions, I think this is going to affect me one way, shape, or form. Hence, it happened. Okay. Now, what do we do? And that's one of the reasons why I want to do this episode, because I want you to start not just thinking about it, but do something about it now. Depending on your support contract, because now there's no such thing as perpetual licenses anymore for VMware. So depending on your support contract, there will be a time, kind of like a deadline. You will have a deadline on until when you can still use VMware licenses, and then after that, you start paying for subscription. Okay, I want to give you some actionable items so that you can, again, true to the theme of this entire thing, practical SQL Server high availability and disaster recovery. How can you make and of course, if you're running stuff on VMware, specifically SQL Server high availability, even if you're not running high availability solutions, SQL Server HA rather, on VMware, this still applies to you. If you're not using VMware, carry on, move on, watch other episodes, use your time wisely. But again, I'm going to give you some practical advice on, not just practical advice, but actionable advice that you can use to start making sense of whatever is going to happen within the next couple of months, or depending on how far away your support contract is with VMware, might as well make the most out of what you have and then take action. Okay. The goal of every business is to reduce twofold: increase profitability, two, reduce costs, or three, if you can do both, even better. Regardless, the reason why virtualization became a thing, because it is very difficult to predict capacity. It's very difficult to predict all of these things. So we buy very, very, very expensive hardware back in the days, and they're underutilized. That's an expense. So virtualization came in and solved the problem of, I don't know how much CPU memory storage I need within the next couple of months. Let's just buy very expensive hardware and then throw in as many VMs as we possibly can. What saved money in the past 15, 20 years is now starting to become a cost. And by the very nature of every business, to make increase profits, reduce costs, or do both, this is one thing that you better start thinking about now and do something about now. Grab your pen and paper ready. I've got my notes right here. Practical. I did say practical, right? Actionable things. If you're running SQL Server on VMware, whether you're taking advantage of their VMware HA solution, or you're using SQL Server HA solutions like always on availability group, failover clustered instances on VMware, grab your pen and paper ready, take notes. Number one, do the math. Yeah, I know. This is something that some of my customers recently asked. What do you mean, do the math? I get pushbacks when I tell technical professionals you have to start thinking like your CFO or CIO. When I say do the math, grab your pen and paper or your Excel spreadsheets and put dollar values on your IT assets. IT is already considered to be a cost center, so you always have to be thinking about how can I reduce cost while still meeting the business objectives using technology. So do the math. So for instance, let's say, and I want this to be as practical and as actionable as possible. Let's say that you have until the end of 2024. Okay, you have until the end of 2024 before your perpetual license expires and you start doing subscription. Do a quick inventory of the entire environment that you're running VMware on. And it doesn't matter whether you're running SQL Server or other workloads, it's still VMware. And you're still going to be paying VMware license for that. Do a quick inventory and then place a dollar value on every single one of those. Meaning, if you're buying, because now even ESXi is not free anymore, ESXi, vCenter, management tools, DRS, VMware HA, put a dollar value in all of those. And then, because at the moment you're not paying for anything, right? Put a dollar value beside those, and then calculate how much you're going to be paying for them once you start using the subscription model. And use the 5-year window. And I say 5-year window because typically you would either, and I typically base this on hardware, you would either buy hardware or licenses within 5-year 5-year window, and then you either upgrade, you sunset the hardware, replace it. But this should give you some ideas of how much you will be spending based on the new subscription model. Okay, again, put a dollar value on every single one of those items that you have within your VMware infrastructure. vSAN, ESXi, vCenter, management tools, HA, DR, all of these things. How much will it be per CPU and all? Put that on a spreadsheet, 5 years. Again, you start by the end of this year, if that's your contract, then calculate how much that is for the next 5 years. Then you have a total, okay? Versus, and I say versus because I've seen cases where, man, this is really, really expensive. We don't have any other choice but to move away from it, even though it's painful. And when I mean painful, I mean literally painful. I've worked with customers who moved away from Oracle, not something that I would recommend because that is really painful. Really, really painful experience moving away from an Oracle solution into a Microsoft solution. But again, remember how we started this conversation, reducing cost overall. Okay, reducing cost. Even if it was painful, they planned it, they did it anyway, which saved them hundreds and thousands of dollars on licensing and support down the road. So first one, do the math. And this is going to be a lot of work. You will have to talk to your bean counters, people who are your finance people. You'll have to talk to your CIO. You have to talk to your infrastructure guys. You have to talk to anybody who's touching those, just to get a quick inventory. And by the way, this also gives you an opportunity to do an inventory, because now you have to keep track of every single asset that you have that requires a VMware license. Okay, so doing the math means calculating the new cost based on the new subscription model for a span of 5 years versus the alternative. In the alternative, this is what I'm now starting to see with my customers, is to move away from VMware. What do I mean by that? Well, if you want to try Hyper-V again, or Azure Stack HCI, or Proxmox, or XCP, or what is the cost of moving to an alternative? Okay, doing the first one is easy. I mean, calculating the subscription cost within the next 5 years for everything that you have, that's relatively easy because you ask questions. But then doing the alternative, meaning moving away from VMware and into another platform that you've never used before, that you don't have any experience, that you don't have any staff for, is a little bit risky. That's why I said doing the alternative is risky. And that's also one of the reasons why people would just say, we'll just pay VMware, the additional subscription cost, and we'll just eat up the cost, because they don't want to deal with the unknown. However, again, at the end of the day, the powers that be, the people making decisions, will have to call out on, hey, this is costing us this much. Moving to another platform is the way we're doing it. And do a side-by-side comparison between 5 years of paying VMware for all of these, and then also how much is it going to cost right now if we move away from VMware into this, and how much is it going to cost us within the next 5 years? Of course, initial cost is going to be more expensive because you're going to have to train your staff. You're going to have to learn it. If you haven't worked with Proxmox or Hyper-V before, you're going to have to learn it. You're going to have to slowly migrate. That's a migration project, right? That's a migration project in and of itself. So you have to factor the cost in, support, what else? Anything that comes into that. And then let the math speak for itself. And I've done this in the past where it's not an entire infrastructure, because platform is easier. I want to move from, I don't want to say it's easier, but at least it's predictable. Like moving from Oracle to SQL Server, it's a lot of pain. But now we're looking at the entire infrastructure, because now you have to think about, can I convert my VMDKs or my VMware VMs into Hyper-V or to Proxmox version, or those are unknowns. And if you haven't done it before, it's scary, right? So do the math, let the math dictate how you do it. That's the first one. The second one is just to decide, make a decision, okay? Make a decision whether you want to move to whatever platform that you're looking at, or you want to stay. both of which will still carry a cost. But that was not the goal. The goal is for us to reduce the cost. Is staying with VMware within the next 5 years more costly, or is moving to a different platform while expensive in the earlier stages? Because again, this is an entire platform migration project. Is moving everything from VMware to whatever platform you decide going to be cheaper within the same 5-year time frame? The sooner you decide, the better. Because remember, you got a deadline. As far as VMware is concerned, there's a time limit on how long you can still use your perpetual license, to make sure that you make a decision immediately so you're not paying for both. If you decide you want to stay, stay. But if you decide you want to move to a different platform, do it quick. Do it quick to a point where you're not paying double, like you're paying VMware for the subscription license while at the same time paying for this new platform, or the moving to this new platform. Again, you're going to be paying for manpower. You're going to be paying for training. You're going to be paying for side by side. Again, this is a side by side migration in and of itself. So there's a cost associated to it. Okay, I kind of compare this to having a mortgage or trying to buy a house while at the same time trying to sell your old house. You already bought the house and now you're paying 2 mortgages. The sooner you get rid of the old house, the lower your mortgage payments. So decide, act fast, and make sure you don't do it 3 months before the end of your perpetual license deadline. Make sure that you do it fast, which also means that you got to do the numbers, and you got to do the math fast. And what a lot of people fall into is the trap of trying to overanalyze everything. No, just do an estimate. Just do an estimate, but make sure it's a really good estimate based on the data that you've captured in the past. Don't overfixate on trying to capture everything, because that would lead you into analysis paralysis. You're not making decisions, which is costing you even more, right? So decide, act fast. If you might want to factor in how much you're spending for subscription licenses, or for subscription, while you're doing that, if you decide to do that. Again, do the math. I'll go back to that, making that decision. And number 3, and it's easy to say, decide and act fast. It's easy to say, but you'll be surprised that sometimes I come in as a consultant, people are still making a decision, gathering a lot of information. I would tell them, like, just do it. Because waiting until you get all of the information to make decision is a cost. The goal is to reduce the cost in the first place. So just do it. Do it now. Okay. Number 3. Yeah, I did say act fast. Number 3 is act fast, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're paying for this new platform, meaning you're paying to move to this new platform while at the same time now paying VMware for the new subscription licenses. Think of, again, whether you like it or not, the licensing has changed, and so you need to adapt. You need to adapt to it. The sooner you adapt to it, the better. This is the industry that we're working in. And I remember this was one of the challenges when SQL Server introduced a new licensing model in SQL Server 2012. Back in 2008 and earlier, everything was on a per socket basis. I want a license per socket. So if I can throw in 24 cores in that socket, I'm good, right? Until Microsoft moved to core-based licenses as the evolution of new CPU hardware came in. And a lot of customers pushed back on it. But then this is the world that we are living in. New cores are introduced, new computing resources are introduced in the new CPUs. Microsoft had to adapt. And so customers either stayed with the old licensing model, never upgrade until SQL Server 2008 is uh, no longer under extended support, so we don't have a choice but to move away from it. Okay, same thing. The game has changed. VMware made Broadcom made new rules, and so you have to either adapt or leave. That's it. You either stay or leave, but make a decision. Act fast, right? This is how. This is uh, just sharing some of the things that you can start doing right now with what I call the new VMware, or should I say Broadcom. The new VMware, what you need to do for your HADR solutions if you are running SQL Server workloads or any type of workloads on VMware, okay, is do the math, let the spreadsheet guide you, let the numbers on the spreadsheet guide you, do the math within a 5-year range. How much are you going to be paying VMware within the span of 5 years versus how much are you going to be investing plus the cost of operating the entire thing to the new platform 5 years, so that you can do a side-by-side comparison, like apples to apples comparison. Number two, once you have the numbers, decide. You decide whether you want to move to a new platform or you want to stay with VMware, right? And number three, act fast. You don't want to be in a situation where you're paying twice. You're paying to move to the new platform while still paying VMware for the new licensing. Again, welcome to the new world of VMware. I kind of have an idea of how this is going to pan out because I'm seeing it now. Some of their uh, uh, products are either being sold off because, again, it's a strategy that Broadcom has been doing ever since he started buying technology companies. So there's no doubt that they're going to do it here. Again, I'm not speculating. It's how they did business back then. It's how they're still doing business. So you need to act fast so that you can either, again, stay or move to another platform, and you can maximize whatever investments that you have while at the same time meeting your high availability and disaster recovery requirements without breaking the bank. Like I said, HA and DR is already expensive. So you have to always think of ways and how to reduce the cost whilst making sure that you're still meeting your recovery objectives and your service level agreements. That is about it for this week's episode. And I wanted to do this episode a couple of months ago when the Broadcom VMware deal uh, was finalized, but I also wanted to see if Broadcom decides to do anything different from how it did its previous acquisitions. And well, sad to say, or maybe it's good. I don't know. Something good might come out of it. Um, it it's panned out exactly how I predicted in late November, but that it is what it is right now. So make sure, again, make that decision. Either you stay or you move to a different platform. And if you do decide to move to a different platform, act fast. Okay. And if you need help with moving to a different platform, whether that's Hyper-V or Proxmox, I want to say Citrix, but not really. Depends on what kind of workloads you run. Reach out, use that link on the screen, schedule a strategy session. I've done a couple of these projects in the past. It's interesting because the whole moving from one platform to another is no different from moving from physical machines to VMs, from private cloud to public cloud, and we're doing the same thing with VMware to another platform. The process is basically the same. The numbers are not. So you got to make those, you got to justify whether you want to stay or you move using the numbers, and then act fast. Again, use that link on the screen. Schedule a strategy session if you need help with planning the entire move, having the resources, getting your staff trained on the newer platforms. Again, Hyper-V or Proxmox. Use the link on the screen, schedule a strategy session, and let's have that conversation, right? Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully you start dealing with this. If you're already on a subscription model, nothing's going to change other than watching for incremental changes in the cost. Pretty sure they're going to bump up the cost of subscription. I'm pretty sure about that. It's just business. Again, again, it's fun. It's fun looking at how somebody or someone, in this case, Broadcom or something, it's an entity, how they did something in the past, how it stayed consistent because they have one goal in mind, and that is to make more money. Unfortunately, at the expense of their customers. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you again in the next episode of the Practical SQL Server HA DR show. Goodbye.